"Are you sad, Mr. Moon?" asked the Fairy Queen. "I feel that something is the matter with you. You don't seem to be yourself tonight. Won't you tell us the trouble? I heard you say that once in a blue moon, you like to have a banquet, and I thought perhaps you knew of another moon, and wanted him to shine for you." "I'm not blue. That is, I'm not really blue, though now I do feel blue and very sad." "Oh, Mr. Moon," said the Fairy Queen, "I am so glad you told me what the trouble was, for if you hadn't told me we might have had a very sad misunderstanding. Of course we didn't want another moon, and there is no other moon but you, dear Mr. Moon. When people say, once in a blue moon, they mean, once in a great while. They don't mean that they want a blue moon, and can only give such a party when there is a blue moon, or whatever they are planning to give or do. Now we are going to have a banquet, and I meant that I thought it was nice to have a banquet once in a great while. That was a silly saying I used, that's all. I'm so relieved," said Mr. Moon, smiling once more. "I never heard of another moon, but of course how was I to be sure? Such wonderful things happen all the time. People fly up in the air in airships, and behave just like birds. So I wasn't sure whether there was another moon or not, and thought perhaps this fellow was blue. Being blue in color and feeling blue in spirits are different. Quite different," said the Fairy Queen. "You don't feel blue now, do you?" And as the moon grinned happily, the Fairy Queen knew that everything was all right, and a banquet took place in Fairyland that night. Marion had a little shady flower bed. Every spring at just about this time she would go into the woods with a trowel and basket and pick out the loveliest ferns. These she would carry home in her basket. Then in the shady afternoon she would go to her fernery with a watering pot. First she would dig a little hole, then she would put some water in it to see that the roots of the fern got plenty of moisture, for that is what ferns love. Then she would put the root of the fern in the hole and put soft earth firmly around it. After she had planted her ferns she watered them some more, for she was very careful that her ferns should be planted just right, and that is why she had such good luck with them. Every spring she would add to her fernery, and the ferns that she had planted the year before came up more beautifully than ever. She would get interesting looking rocks and stones and put them between ferns here and there in the little fernery. It was very delightful to see the plants come up in the spring and then go to the woods and get some more beautiful ones. She was very particular, you may be sure, to get nice young ones, for they are the best to transplant. The Mr. Tree Swallows are bluish-green above and white underneath. The Mrs. Tree Swallows are gray and white beneath, said Daddy. Sometimes they build their nests out of grass with feathers for the lining. In fact, that is the way they usually do, but they sometimes like to find bird homes already made for them. They sing or make a little chirping sound as their other swallow cousins do. They usually build their nests in hollow trees and like to sit on old branches, so they have been called the tree swallows. For their cousins, the barn swallows, build their homes around barns. These swallows like to fly high in the air, and they also love to sit on telegraph wires. They say that they wish to be modern and up to date, and that as they can't answer the telephones or call their friends up, they can sit on the telephone wires and feel they are part of a nice world. There was once a little fairy, who was named Fairy Sunrise, because every morning she got up just at the same time as Mr. Sun did. She had a great love for nice little pigs, as she thought they were very cunning, and not at all the horrid little creatures some people think they are. But one little pig worried her a great deal. He put on airs and was very proud of himself. The little pig's name was Gink, and he was the pet pig of a little girl who lived on a farm. Gink had overheard some city people who had visited the farm talk about their figures. For a long time he couldn't imagine what they meant. Then, after listening for some time, he heard one of them say that it was quite all right to eat everything anyone wanted to, but everyone must exercise, walk and play games so as not to grow fat, for it was so ugly to be fat. Gink had never thought it was ugly to be fat, but then that was because he had never really thought about it at all. And yet when he did think about it, he decided that he would much rather keep just plump, as he now was, than grow as fat as his mother was. For he said that his mother was a little bit old-fashioned, and he wanted to be a very modern pig. The next day he went for a walk. He went through the little village, just managing to escape from under horses' feet and the little boys' bicycles. He went as far as the lake, where he saw some boys starting off on a camping trip. "Don't you want to come with us?" asked one of the boys. The little pig was just about to start off, thinking in his vain way that the trip would do him good, when he heard a second boy say, "Won't he make wonderful bacon?" Then you should have seen little Gink run home to his mistress. And after that awful fright and narrow escape, Gink stayed on the farm outside the village, and decided fashions were very silly, and apt to be dangerous. He also lost his love of walking. And little fairy Sunrise, who had been around just in time to whisper to the little boy, though of course he didn't see her, the word, bacon, which had frightened Gink so much, was delighted that all her schemes had worked out so well, and that she had cured the vain Gink. "I must tell you a story tonight," commenced Daddy, "of the sick kangaroo in the zoo. To tell the truth, the kangaroo wasn't sick at all. He simply thought he was, but he succeeded in making the keeper think so too. This pleased the kangaroo, as all he really wanted was to have a fuss made over him. The strange thing about his illness was that the keeper couldn't imagine what was the matter with the kangaroo. He had a perfectly good appetite, for he couldn't give up eating just to pretend he was sick, for really and truly he knew he was just pretending. Now, this puzzled the keeper, but he thought there must be some kangaroo sickness where the animal could still eat, and yet be far from well. The keeper became so worried over the kangaroo's strange sickness that at night he would get up to see if the kangaroo was asleep. Every time he went to look, the kangaroo was sound asleep, breathing very quietly. The keeper thought to himself that this must be a good sign, for if he happened to be suffering from indigestion, he would certainly be moaning and having bad dreams. Finally, the keeper decided the kangaroo must have heart failure. The next day the keeper sent for the doctor, and the doctor examined the kangaroo's heart. He said that it was one of the strongest hearts that he had ever examined. And the keeper was still more puzzled. The kangaroo used to sit for hours and hours just playing with his tail. Sometimes he would think it was time to show how badly he felt by crying. So he would first look as if he just were able to keep back the tears, and then he would act as if he could keep it up no longer and would shake with sobs. Now this kangaroo had always been spoiled by his mother. When he was very, very young, he could always have everything he wanted, so nothing was ever really a big treat. He always got sick at parties because he ate too much, and his mother would never stop him, and on holidays he always was allowed to turn things topsy-turvy. But one day, when the animals were all to be given a special treat, little fairy Silverwings, who had heard of the kangaroo's sickness, whispered to the other animals to leave him behind to twist his tail and moan while they had their game of ball. Then the kangaroo set up a howling such as never had been heard in Animalland, for he didn't want to miss a party, just as Fairy Silverwings had said. So when they all thought he had learned a good lesson, they went back for him. How ashamed he was when the animals at first snubbed him, but he never made a fuss again, for he had had a great fright that he was going to miss a party through his foolishness. "I've heard people talking about their family trees," said the first maple tree. "And I simply don't understand it. They've said that so and so came from that branch of the family, and I've never seen a few aunts who made up a branch or a few uncles who made up a branch or who looked anything like a branch. I never have." "I can explain that," said the second maple tree. "When people speak of their family tree, they mean their family and their family's ancestors or grandmothers and grandfathers. You see, a family is like a big tree. There is the root of it all, the first family from which all the different relatives or branches sprung which are related to the family, just as branches are all related to and connected with the tree." "Oh, now I see, thank you," said the first maple tree. "We know what our name means," said the daisies. "We come from the old family of Daisy, the eyes of the day, because we're so bright and wide awake and strong." "There were two rabbits," said Daddy, "which I want to tell you about. Their names were Clover and Pinky. Clover loved to hear her name. She loved to be called by it very often, and she liked it best of all when her name was made very real by getting a lot of clover to eat. The other rabbit's name was Pinky. Pinky was so named because of his very bright pink eyes. They were really beautiful pink eyes. Clover had pink eyes, too, but they were not so bright. They were a little bit paler in shade than Pinky's eyes. Pinky thought they were very fairly named, for, of course, Clover should have the better name of the two, because Clover was Mrs. Rabbit and it was polite and nice to give the lady the nicer name. Both the rabbits were white without a touch of black. They were very fond of each other. They were very tame and fond of children, and they were extremely fond of all the nice green things they were given to eat. Now the children who owned these rabbits didn't know that daddy rabbits were all right when their children were big, but that when their children were small they weren't so nice because they were apt to kill them. The daddies didn't care for their babies when they were only little bits of fluff. They didn't see that they would grow up into nice rabbits later on. So these two rabbits, Pinky and Clover, were not separated, and Clover, somehow, wasn't as afraid of Pinky as sometimes a mother rabbit is. That is, a mother rabbit is never afraid of a daddy rabbit for herself, for she knows he will never hurt her, but she is afraid for her little ones. So when she knows that the little ones are soon to come, she hides away from the daddy rabbit. Clover wasn't at all nervous. She saw that the children didn't know that they should be separated. And she somehow thought Pinky would act very nicely about the little ones. She made a little hole in the ground, and soon there came 7 of the sweetest, most cunning little bits of white fluff you ever did see. She had quite a hard time naming so many little babies, but at last she named them, and these were the names she decided upon. Her eldest son was named Bun. Her eldest daughter was named Bunny. Her second son was named Pink after his dad, and the second daughter was named Cloverine after herself. The third son was named Spot, because of a little black spot which he had on his nose, and the third daughter was named Rabbity, while the fourth son was named Baby Bun. And do you know that Pinky never touched one of those children so as to hurt them? He didn't kill them, he didn't bite them. But instead he watched Mother Rabbit taking care of them. He saw her giving them their meals. He watched her as she taught them the lessons all rabbits must know. And he saw the children pick them up and handle them very gently and kiss them and say how precious they were. After they grew up into bigger rabbits, some of them were given away and became the pets of other children, and Clover and Pinky were together again once more without the young ones. I miss them, said Clover, but I know that children will be good to their rabbit pets, for I have always been treated so kindly and nicely by children. So have I, said Pinky. And the rabbits sniffed and their little noses wiggled and trembled as they told each other what a nice world it was with children and Clover both in it. The other day Mrs. Heron was talking to Mrs. Bird of Paradise, said Daddy. Ah, Mrs. Heron was saying, it does seem too bad that just when our little ones are born, just then, they shoot us, and leave our little ones to starve. And all for fashions, too, friend. Think of mothers, wearing mothers on their hats whose little ones have been left behind to die. It's something I cannot understand. All we can hope for, said Mrs. Bird of Paradise, is that lots and lots of children will come to the zoo and that they will hear from the keeper about us and will go home and tell their mothers. Yes, said Mrs. Heron, for sometimes I do believe people don't know or understand, or they wouldn't do such cruel things. I am sure a great many must be ignorant, for I don't believe so many would be cruel, especially just for fashion and style, said Mrs. Bird of Paradise. I hope, said Mrs. Heron, that children will remember when they grow up themselves not to wear regret feathers which destroy the lives of birds who want to live and care for their little ones. They strike us down when we're dancing and happy and have chosen our little mates, Mrs. Bird of Paradise said sadly. And mothers wear us on their hats, said Mrs. Heron. They wear other mothers whose babies have died of starvation because of a cruel fashion. Let's hope for better times ahead for our families, Mrs. Bird of Paradise ended. Let's hope so, said Mrs. Heron. Oh, Daddy, said Evelyn, I've made up my mind, of course, never in the world to wear feathers of birds where we're doing cruel harm. I know, and I could never forget, but I've made up my mind to start a club of little girls who'll all promise never to wear the feathers of birds such as the herons or the birds of paradise or any other feathers where the birds have to be killed. We'll wear ostrich feathers and plumes which come out naturally. And I'm going to get any number of my friends together and we'll have meetings, and at each meeting every member will tell an interesting story of some bird she has seen. Once a month we'll have refreshments. But most of all, said Evelyn, for she could see Jack smiling over the refreshments, we'll never be cruel to birds. That's right, said Jack, the idea of big creatures such as we are being cruel to little creatures like birds, and I'm going to start a boys' club where we'll study birds and take their pictures, but we'll never steal their eggs. A little girl named Betty, said Daddy, once had a pet cow. Now, that may seem a very strange pet to have, but, after all, the cow was a very nice pet, for every morning and every evening she gave Betty delicious warm milk. Betty always milked her own Bossy herself and would carry into the house twice a day a bucket of milk. But before she did that she always had to drink a little first, so the cow would be pleased and would look at her softly out of her great big eyes. Betty called her cow Bossy. White, for the cow had a round white spot above her right eye. During the daytime Bossy White stayed in the pasture, and at nighttime she came into a warm, comfortable stall in the barn. Betty's home was very near a swamp, where a great many black racer snakes lived. But as the pasture had a wire fence all around it, nobody was afraid the snakes could get inside. The black racer snakes adore chasing cows and try their hardest to catch them. Often they succeed. Nobody had noticed it, but a piece of wire had really broken in a part of the fence, and one of the black racer snakes got in. Now, said the snake to himself, I shall have lots of fun chasing this cow. So he began to hurry through the grass, and poor Bossy White ran for all she was worth, almost frightened out of her wits. A little boy passing by saw the cow running and the grass moving, so he knew that a black racer snake was chasing the cow. He jumped over the fence and called, "Bossy White," for he had often heard Betty call her. "Come, Bossy White, follow me." And he led a wild chase, running first to one side and then to the other until they reached the barn in safety. You see, with the cow following the little boy's crooked route, the snake could not keep up, but got way behind, for the black racer snakes lose so much time in going from side to side that is the way to escape them. When the little boy and the cow reached the barn, there was Betty waiting to milk Bossy White. She couldn't understand why Bossy White rushed into the barn nor why the little boy was so breathless. As soon as the little boy got his breath, though, he told Betty what had happened. You can imagine how happy Betty was to feel that her beloved Bossy White had been saved, and she told the little boy how grateful she was to him. She also said, "Now I know how grateful Bossy White feels, and I'm sure she'd like to give you a bucketful of her delicious milk." So the little boy, who was very poor and who had an invalid mother, took home his reward of a bucketful of delicious milk. A doubly strong wire fence was put around the pasture, so that Bossy White never again was chased by a black racer snake.